Hi, it's Noel from the Meat Mafia Collective here. So today we're going to talk about trimming ribs, but we're going to trim to competition barbecue spec. So the fundamental difference with that and cooking at home for your family is it's all about aesthetics. So we want these ribs looking really good. We want all the hard fats removed, we want all the sinew removed, and we want all the cartilage removed. So when the judges bite into that rib, it's the best bite that they've ever had. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, I know it sounds really simple, but first thing is you've got to have a really sharp knife for trimming. That's probably one of the key things. So we're just going to give this 4 swipes and just make sure it's got a good edge on it. In terms of opening the pack, I see a lot of people opening from the back, and what happens there is you actually nick the membrane and it doesn't come off in one piece. So first tip I'm going to give you is always open from the meat side and just put a tiny little nick that allows you to get your finger in, and just run your finger down the length of the pack just so that you can get the rib out. Competition, we want nice straight bones. So if we look at the back of this, we can actually see that there's some really good straight bones running through the center here. So we're going to get 4, 5, maybe 6 really decent ribs out of this rack. So I'm really happy with the way the rack looks so far. We can see that there's a bit of a flap on the back here, and if you look at that, I can pick the whole rib up with that flap. That doesn't cook up very well. We want that to go because we don't want judges biting into that. So we're going to flip it over and we're going to think about how these are going to cook now. So we can kind of see that it tapers off at this end. We're going to be taking our ribs from the middle section here. So we're going to do a bit of trimming just to get that a bit more even so it cooks evenly once we get it onto the barbecue. We can kind of see there's more of that sinew and silver skin here, and what that's doing is putting a barrier between the meat and the rub. So we want to get as much flavour into that meat as we possibly can. So let's kick off. First thing we're going to look at is the membrane. Little secret here is that we use kitchen roll to actually grip the membrane. So the membrane is extremely slippery. If you try and pull it off without the kitchen roll, you end up splintering it and it comes off in 15 different pieces and it takes ages to actually get done. So the simple way is to actually knead the corner off here. And another secret for you guys, I see a lot of people pulling the membrane down the length of the rib. And what you want to do is you actually want to pull it at the same angle. So we're going to be pulling it at the same angle as this flap. And what that does is it just keeps the tension on and means you can remove the membrane all in one piece. So let's get into that now. So we're just going to knead that corner off. Got the grip, and we've managed to take that all off in one piece. So if we have a look at the back of this rib now, we've actually exposed all the proteins between the bones, so we know that that rub's going to get into the actual meat. And then we can start trimming the back. So as I said, we've got a flap here. Don't want to eat that, so we're actually going to start trimming, sort of hugging the bone, going in between the bones and just taking the sinew off as we run along the back of this rib. And then you actually see that there's a short bone here and it's mainly cartilage in this back end. So we are cooking competition, so we're just going to lose that piece. So pretty happy with the back of that rib now. So we've got all the protein exposed, we've got all that sinew off. And now we're going to focus on the front side of the rib. So we can kind of see that there's these edge pieces here which we know will char up in the cook because it's a 4-hour cook. And we can kind of see that there is a sinew here and a lot of fat on this end. So again, competition, we're taking our ribs from the middle section, so we're actually just going to lose that end entirely because they're not what we're going to use in the box. So what I do is I actually get my finger in between the bones and I'm just feeling where that is, and what I want to do is just keep a bit of meat on the end of that so that the bones don't pierce the foil. And a little trick here with silver skin is to just get under the silver skin and then keep your knife pointed to the sky so that you're hugging the back of the fat. And that means you take very little meat off. Okay, so the next part is looking at the cartilage. So we can kind of see that the bones end about here, and then all of this side is cartilage. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a line with a knife basically. So we're going to feel where that bone ends and where that cartilage starts, and we're just going to draw a line across the back of these bones, which is basically where we're going to cut. So you can kind of see that I've just made that cut here, so that's my line. And I know that I'm removing all the cartilage if I follow that line. So we're going to make the cut now. Okay, again, for those of you that don't like to waste meat, what I usually do with these is cut them into 2-inch pieces. I'll fry those off with a bit of honey soy, put those on rice, and that's actually really quite a nice meal. Heaps of meat on that, so you can actually reuse that. So we're just going to do the final touches now. So we want to get rid of this fat because we want the rub to sit on there, and we want a really nice uniform background for the glaze to sit on. So we're going to take some of this fat off sits in between the bones. So again, it's all about detail. It's all about making these look as pretty as they possibly can be when they go into the smoker. So the final thing that we actually want to do is take off these sharp edges because we know that they're going to char up during the cook. So I just run the knife down, and I'm kind of doing that at a 45-degree angle. So what I'm also doing in the process of doing this trim is actually tapering off the edge so that it's more rounded, and that will cook up more evenly. And it just means when you slice them, you don't have charred edges that will pull off. So again, I'm going to do the same on the other side. So I run my knife down, I can just see some uneven edges. So I'm just putting a bit of pressure on that just to squash the meat out, coming in at an angle, and it's a very, very small amount of meat that you take off, but it makes a huge difference to the final result of the rib. So what we have there is a competition rack of ribs, rectangular bones, about 110 mil long. So we know they're going to present really well in the box. And that's it.